What is going on, guys? It is WrestleMania here, back with another episode. You know what, Kenny Omega has been causing quite a stir amongst the wrestling community with whether he'll ever sign with the WWE. He has wrestled in a number of different promotions, but undoubtedly made a name for himself in New Japan Pro Wrestling when he became the new leader of the Bullet Club. We aren't really sure what Omega has planned in the near future, but here are 10 facts you may not have known about him. Number 1. He's an avid gamer. Omega since a young age has been a big fan of video games. Even his name itself was inspired by the Omega weapon, which was a super boss from the Final Fantasy series, although we're not too sure where the origins of Kenny came from. He even named his finishing maneuver the One-Winged Angel, a clear reference to the character of Sephiroth again in the Final Fantasy series. In the ring, Omega has even done a Street Fighter style Hadouken. He also has a YouTube channel where he uploads regular Street Fighter 4 online matches. In 2016, he faced wrestler and YouTuber Xavier Woods in Street Fighter V at the CEO 2016 Fighting Game Championships. Omega even won against him with one of his favorite characters, Alex. He's straight edge. It seems like Daniel Bryan and CM Punk aren't the only straight edge wrestlers. In a tweet from February last year, Graham Wolf tweeted to Omega, "You look like a person I could share a beer with. Is that odd?" With Omega replying, "Only because I don't drink." He then asked, "Are you straight edge?" Omega replied with, "Pretty much, no beer, tobacco, or drugs." He speaks fluent Japanese. Since Omega lives in Japan on a permanent basis, it was essential for him to learn the language. Although he's not 100% fluent, Omega learned the language by reading Japanese manga. He wrestled a doll and a child. Yes, you heard right, but funnily enough, the idea of a child wrestling an adult is not an isolated phenomenon. Case in point, little Japanese Undertaker girl. As the story goes, the girl, Haruka, was upset that she wasn't being recruited as a professional wrestler, so to make up for it, the promotion wanted to cheer her up by letting her have a match. The match was risky and could have been career suicide if he had hurt her. He admitted on the Talk Is Jericho show that this was one of his most favourite matches at the time. As for the blow-up doll, Omega explained the doll was featured in matches at DDT, but he and Kota Ibushi were the first ones to wrestle it in competitive matches. He told that both Ibushi and himself had put a lot of effort into the matches, which got over really quick. As for an explanation of why it happened, we still don't have a full one, but Omega explained he just catered to the weird world of DDT wrestling. In fact, Omega confessed he wanted to structure it in a way that the doll would actually win. He had a 6-star match. I'm sure most are familiar with the Wrestling Observer newsletter with Dave Meltzer's wrestling match star rating, which can be given a maximum of 5 stars, which some wrestlers have accomplished. Well, the recent match between him and Kazuchika Okada at Wrestle Kingdom 11 garnered a never before seen 6-star rating, with Meltzer calling it the greatest match ever. Some though don't believe it should have been given that rating, like the vocal Jim Cornette, who professed that the match wasn't even a 5-star rating. He said, and I quote, "Kenny Omega and Okada match was anywhere near as good as Jerry Lawler vs Terry Funk, Tiger Mask vs the Dynamite Kid, Ric Flair vs Steamboat, Steve Austin vs Bret Hart, among others. I mean, it was a great display of athleticism. I mean, these guys, they took a lot of risks, but it had such obvious cooperation and moves that nobody could really get up from and etc. fit in that category. The first foreigner to win the G1 Climax tournament. Getting his way through a hellish 19-night tournament, Omega became the first non-Japanese wrestler to win the NJPW's prestigious G1 Climax tournament in August of last year. Omega managed to capture the trophy after winning against Haruka Goto. If you're unfamiliar with the tournament, similar to winning the Royal Rumble, the winner gets to challenge any New Japan champion at Wrestle Kingdom. And as you know, that challenger would go on to be Kazuchika Okada. Ringmaster version 2. In an interview with Jericho, Omega elaborated on his gimmick, mentioning the cleaner was supposed to be a hitman or a silent and cold person like the ringmaster Steve Austin, but he always pictured himself more like Chris Jericho. He said, and I quote, "When I was given the Kenny Omega the cleaner gimmick I'm using now, that's the thing. What is the cleaner, right? It was supposed to be because of the Bullet Club, the bullets and guns. The cleaner was supposed to be a sort of assassin-like gimmick. That guy that cleans up the murder site or whatever it is after they put a hit on someone." New Japan takes a lot of influence from WWE. The way they book things, the way they model their characters. It sort of felt like they wanted me to look like the ringmaster Steve Austin, where he had mouthpieces around him at all times, where he was more or less silent and very cold, calculated individual. Omega explained the character just wasn't for him, and his gimmick is mostly just an extension of himself. He was unhappy at WWE Developmental. Omega actually was in the WWE at one time, per se. He was at Deep South Wrestling in 2006, which was one of WWE's developmental territories from 2005 to 2007. It was there he was evaluated by the controversial trainer Bill DeMott, who had a very harsh method of training. But it wasn't DeMott's method that he had a problem with though, it was the cliquish behavior and backstage politics. In fact, in an interview with Under the Mat, he would be the first person to comment on DeMott's training. The problem with Deep South to me is that there was a group that were tight with the boss, and they would always go out and drink and have barbecues. Then when WWE would say who should we look at, Bill DeMott would say, oh, look at this guy and this guy. Of course those were his buddies. His look is inspired by both Albert Wesker and Cobra. Omega confirmed his current look as the Cleaner is a hybrid of Albert Wesker from the Resident Evil series, and his shades are straight from Marion Cobretti from the 1986 hit film starring Sylvester Stallone as Cobra. He also has a bit of Schwarzenegger in him with the Terminator series, wearing a T-800 mask during his Wrestle Kingdom 11 entrance. He almost quit wrestling. His time in WWE Developmental had affected Omega so much that his desire to become a pro wrestler declined. This led him to taking a different direction, trying his hand in MMA combat, and also took part in a number of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu tournaments. Omega nearly gave up on the sport entirely and got a full-time job at an airport. Omega was booked to have a match with AJ Styles and was going to retire on a high note. During the match, Omega was so impressed with AJ's athleticism and enthusiasm, it ignited his love for pro wrestling, and the rest is history. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed 10 facts on Kenny Omega, and subscribe for some more wrestling content.